so that students can actually get to know each other.
Well, I can attest to that. As when I was 12 years old, I was an exchange student to Toluca, Mexico, where I stayed for over a month with the family, and that was the beginning of my quest for learning more about international affairs. So had it not been for that opportunity, I wouldn't be here today.
It's true for almost everyone. Until the door is open for you, you have no idea what's on the other side. But then once you've seen it, I think we all want to sort of learn more, and the quest is off.
They say you don't know what you don't know.
That's for sure.
So tell me a little bit more about your role at the UN Foundation. What is the life of Kathy Bushkin like?
Well, the foundation has 3 missions, and I'm involved in all 3 of them. The first is that we support the UN by doing grants to support projects across the world, as we've been talking. The second is that we try to bring other partners to the table. So we go out and look for other organizations that could support the UN because they want to help perhaps eradicate polio. A major partner of ours is the Rotary International, which is an amazing organization that in 1985 decided it wanted to challenge its members around the world to donate money to eradicate polio. We've only eradicated 1 disease in the history of the world, and that was smallpox. And we're 600 cases away from eradicating polio.
No, what the Rotary has done is amazing.
The Rotary's incredible. They've raised over almost $100 million. It's truly, they've raised $600 million. It's truly incredible. So we look for partners like that and help them work with the UN. It's often difficult for a small company or even a large one to know how best to navigate the UN because it's so large, so that's one of our roles. The third major role we have is advocating for the UN and helping the UN tell its story in the United States. We are strong believers that a strong U.S.-UN relationship is critical and that we can help do work in educating members of Congress. Sometimes even they could learn a few things about the rest of the world and what the UN does. We advocate for passing the dues and the annual peacekeeping allotment that the U.S. Congress has to give to the UN every year. And we help bring attention to the issues that the UN is focused on at the time, whether it be tolerance, eradicating poverty, or bringing people together and trying to solve crises like what's going on in Sudan right now.
And how would you classify the U.S.-UN relations today?
They've been better. I would say it's a strained relationship right now. For many years, the UN was created in 1945, and probably for the first 50 years of its existence, it had a 70-75% approval rating in this country. It was seen as a very vital organization, particularly during the Cold War, because it was a place where the Cold War advocates could come together peaceably. Over the past 10 to 15 years, the relationship has been strained, and questions have been raised about whether the UN is effective and is a friend of the U.S. At the same time, around the world, a lot of other countries, particularly in the Arab world, think that the UN is too close to the U.S. So you can imagine the strains that this puts on this body. Right now, I would say that the Bush administration knows that it's very important to have a strong UN. When Senator Danforth, former Ambassador Danforth, was named to be the ambassador to the UN, he asked President Bush, well, what's your view of the UN? And President Bush said, it's a very important institution. I consider it critical to our national security, and I want to strengthen our relationship with it. So although there have been tensions between the Bush administration and the UN, I think even they realize it has a strategic value. So I think there's room for this relationship to improve over the coming years.
And the UN Foundation is primarily funded by
Ted Turner, famous, I think, in this country for his philanthropy, gave $1 billion to create the UN Foundation and support UN causes in 1997. He later created another foundation called the Nuclear Threat Initiative, which is dedicating to eliminating loose nuclear weapons around the world and removing that threat. He has another foundation that's very focused on the environment. He's the nation's largest private landowner. He was the founder of CNN. He was a former America's Cup sailor. He's a true Renaissance man, and I think he's a great role model for individuals who think, I can make a difference and I'll do something bold and innovative and stand up for an institution I believe in, and he says he would do it again today if he had another $1 billion.
So for those viewers in the audience who might be interested in participating or getting involved in some of the UN Foundation initiatives, where can they go for more information?
Well, a great place to start is unfoundation.org, just the way it sounds, unfoundation.org. And right there you can learn about our programs. You can also find out about ways, if you care about HIV/AIDS and want to help the global crisis on AIDS, there's places to give money to the Global Fund, which is a UN foundation that supports efforts to curtail AIDS. You can give to the polio campaign. You can learn more about what we're doing to eradicate measles. You can learn more about what it takes to have a clean water system in a rural village. And you can actually get involved in helping us reach out to other Americans.
So for those people who are interested in promoting the UN and educating more
right.
on the UN, is there a place at the UN Foundation?
There is, and then there's a place that says education. You click on that and get information about the Global Classrooms curriculum and lots of other information. And we also offer something called UN Wire, which is a daily news alert. So if you just want to know more and get in your email every day something about the UN and world issues, it's a very simple way to do it.
Kathy, I wish we had more time, but unfortunately we have to go. But perhaps you can come back soon.
I'd love to. Whitney, thank you so much for your interest.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. And Kathy Bushkin's here from the UN Foundation, and it was so wonderful to hear her insights and recommendations for those viewers who are interested in learning more on the UN and the UN Foundation.
I wish I could go back when I didn't need someone to do my hair, back when I could still say my husband's name, back when I could have called 911 but didn't, back when I first felt the warning signs of a stroke but did nothing. I wish I could go back, but I can't.
With a stroke, time lost is brain lost. At the first warning signs, take action immediately.
Once you see the world through math and science, you'll never see anything the same way again. Go to girlsgotech.org.
You'll see.
I'm Whitney Belker, and welcome to Miami's Global Connection. Our show is sponsored by the Greater Miami chapter of the United Nations Association. And today our guest is Gillian Sorensen, a senior advisor to the United Nations Foundation. Gillian, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Whitney.
Great. So tell me a little bit about your experience with the United Nations. You've been working with the UN and international affairs for how long now?
I've had a long UN career. The past 11 years I worked in the United Nations Secretariat, first for several years for Secretary General Boutros Ghali, and then for the past 7.5 years for Secretary General Kofi Annan. And then last year I left and joined the United Nations Foundation.
In the context of the U.S., the UN, and the international community, I know that you've had a difficult time in certain circumstances in explaining the importance of the U.S.'s relationship with the international community. Right. We spoke briefly about some of the treaties and how that's caused some problems for the U.S. within the international community.
Well, it's very interesting. There are some members of Congress who imagine that we really don't need anybody else, and that they will not ever sign an international treaty because somehow they feel it diminishes or compromises us. There have been a series of treaties, including the Convention to